Hey friends, this is Kate, and it has been a while since I've sat down for a Stitch With Me project, but I was working on these little pieces for a retreat I'm going to do this weekend. My church is putting on a women's retreat, and in the afternoon there's several breakout sessions where you can go on a walk and have like a walk and talk, or you can do some other different projects. And the one I'm doing is on kind of meditative stitching and slow stitching. So I'm making these little pieces that the ladies can stitch onto their projects. I'm not really teaching embroidery at this slow stitch workshop, but I thought some of them might enjoy having a little piece that's embroidered that they could add to a project. And the thing is that sometimes you just want to make a few pieces. You're not really working on a finished project, but you're wanting some pieces that you can just have on hand. So I thought I would show you what I'm making because some of you might enjoy creating a few of these kinds of pieces yourself. I'm starting off with this doily. It's one of these, that has lots of panels. And I found this at an estate sale and I thought, oh, I can definitely use that because each center has a nice little surface. I'll also use these other parts on other projects. But for today, I'm just trimming out a little star, little flower, and then I'm creating a little scene. I think I'm just going to do wildflowers kind of like this on each one. And I'm using a variegated embroidery floss or thread because I like that it gives me different colors without having to change my thread. So I just thought I would show you what I'm making here, and then you can adapt it to what you're doing. So if you will grab some project that you're working on, you can stitch along with me. Now this one I turned this way, and I think this one I'm going to turn this way. It can all be different. Everybody gets their own. I'm going to start off by just doing a little green lazy daisy stitch. A lazy daisy is where you make a little loop like that, and then you kind of hold it so that it has the loop open, and then you just make a little stitch at the top. That little stitch on the top is going to keep my leaf in place. Just like that. Is it perfect? No, that's all right. Then I'm going to come back to where I started. I'm going to do another little leaf. So how are you guys doing? What are you working on today? I've been doing some stitching in the evenings, but I launched this eBay store, and if you're following me on here and my integrated journey of trying to keep things going with eBay and with my antique booth and with stitching and all the things, you know that I've been working really hard on getting listings done, which has definitely cut down on my sewing time. But I've still been grabbing little bits of sewing time to make just whatever. I made some pillows, I've made some little bunnies, just little things because I enjoy stitching and it's such a relaxing thing. But part of it being relaxing is I don't always feel like doing a video of it. But I thought, you know what, these are so easy and I can chat with you while I am doing this. All right, so I came back in here and I'm just doing a little straight stitch to make a little stem here. Oh my goodness, do you ever overuse the word little? I feel like every time I talk about sewing, it's a little this and a little that. Who else does it? Oh, chefs do that. I'm making a little flambe, and it's just gonna have a little bit of lavender. They always use little too. I don't know. Why is it that we minimize things? But we just do. All right, as you see here, I'm going to end up covering it with little French knots, so I don't have to worry about how complete these are. And then I think I'm actually just gonna add in another stem coming out the side. The goal is not a perfect little, the goal is not just to have a perfect stem with leaves and just have, one. I wanna fill it in with a bunch of French knots. So just gonna give myself a bit of greenery down here that the French knots are connecting to. But I'm not even going to worry about whether I have a stem for every blossom or anything like that. I just want some greenery behind it. That looks kind of cute. I think I might put, see in this one, I just did some random leaves off to the side. And actually I could also do just some little pieces of grass. I like the colors in here, so that's kind of the goal, is just to have a few different colors. And straight stitches are great for grass. You could use a chain stitch if you wanted to. I did that on another project, but I felt like I just wanted most of the texture to be from the French knots of the blossoms, so kind of staying with that. Isn't this so cute how it makes a border for this? I do love that. So I'm just throwing in a few different little straight green stitches. I think I might want one more up here, and it'll just get me into that area then where I can put some blossoms. That's good. And I'm not worried about the fact that I'm kind of traveling across. My goal for these little pieces is that they will go and be sewn onto another piece. So light isn't really coming through it. You know, you're not going to see the threads traveling around. If I was worried about it, I'd go back through and stitch it in on the back. If you ever want to make sure that it's not, you can't see any remnant of thread from the front, you can always just tie it into the back of your piece. But I'm not going to worry about that with this. I am, though, going to tie it off. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to make a little knot, and that'll be it on the green. Now, I have an entire collection here of colors of thread that I could use, but I kind of want to make another yellow one. I really am enjoying the yellow. It feels very springy. Celebrating spring this weekend. My daughter turned 19 years old on Saturday. It is hard to believe, but she is my spring baby. I always thought that spring started on March 21st. And then somebody was like, it starts on, what is it, the 20th? 22nd? It's like a day off. And I always thought the equinoxes and everything were on the 21st. Perhaps it's just June and December. Okay, so next step is I'm just going to make some French knots. French knots are, to me, such fun little texture. You're going to pull up the thread. You're going to wrap it. Now, notice I am using all 6 strands of embroidery floss. That is how I work most of the time, unless I'm doing some really fine detail work. I wrapped it around 3 or 4 times, pulled it through, little knot. That's it. Some people, you know, they find French knots really challenging, and I guess I have, you know, you can get tangled or something, but I find them really relaxing. So, you know, up. Now, you don't want to go through where you already have thread, because that will make a mess on the back. But you're going to wrap one, and it's pretty forgiving. You can do as many times as you want. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, and back down. And I'm not worried about doing 3 every time. Some of them might be bigger, some of them will be smaller. But there are our little flowers. And because it's a variegated thread, it will start getting darker. And I like that. It just kind of adds a little fun. Here are my blossoms. So we went out to celebrate Lily's birthday, and that was really fun. It's just hard to believe I've got a girl who's almost out of her teens. Time sure goes fast. I love this project because I will have a whole pile of these little pieces, and I am going to make different colors so that the ladies can choose one that they like that goes with their project. But each one will be similar. It's just going to be a little kind of field of wildflowers, a couple little wildflower plants in one of these flower star-shaped pieces. And so I've been thinking a lot about this project that I'm creating for them to do. And my goal for them is that they just could straight stitch, and that is all that they'll need to learn to do in order to do their project. And the theme of the retreat is, it's Zakar, which is a Hebrew word that means to remember. And we're looking at different ways to remember what God has done in our lives. And one of the things I'm planning to do is I'm going to print different words, Zakar, but also other words on fabric like I've done before. And so the women will be able to choose a little tag that has words on it, and they can stitch those onto their projects. And, you know, the thing with slow stitching that's kind of challenging when it comes to doing a project is that the point is not to have a project, right? Slow stitching is hand making things and not really worrying about the product as much as the process. And that's what we'll be talking about. But I still want them to have something that they can come away with. I don't know. So that's my dilemma is, you know, well, I want it to be something pretty, which is why I'm pre-making some things for them. They can then just take the piece and stitch it on, stitch it together, have some quiet to just have that rhythmic stitching. Now, if they already knew how to embroider, you know, if they knew how to do French knots and they knew how to do chain stitching or whatever, then I find that that becomes meditative. I'm not thinking about this as I'm doing it, right? It becomes muscle memory and you just do it. So, yeah. If they are experienced sewers, then they can, of course, do whatever they want to. But I'm so excited about these little projects. I think I'll probably make, I don't know if it'll be a pouch or have a pocket on it where they could tuck something. It'll be something along those lines. It's pretty simple and straightforward, but they could stick in a journal or something like that. All right, I'm getting to where my string here, my thread is a little too small for French knots. When you get to that point, it's best to just end it. Yeah, this is not gonna even make a couple, and I do not want to tie a knot on this side of my piece. So I'm just gonna, let's see, I'm just gonna snip it off up here. Even though I'm using these giant eye needles, I always use a needle threader. And the reason is because when you're working with 6 strands of floss, it's just challenging to get them all to stick together and go through a needle, even when it's big. So I'm just going to pull these little guys through, and I'm not going to try to make another French knot. I'm just going to tuck this under, stitch it under it, because I didn't realize I was too low on thread for French knots. And then on the back, I'm just gonna run this through. You don't always have to do a knot. You can also just run it through your other stitches like that, and then trim it off, and that'll keep it in place too. Okay, so do I like it as it is? I think I do. I think I'm happy with this. So there's another little one. Isn't that cute? All right, let's try. Let me take you through harvesting off one of these little pieces. So I'm just gonna trim around, and sometimes people are like, well, doesn't it come apart then? No, it doesn't. Each of these are individual, and then they were sewn into this other piece. Now, if some of you are like, oh no, you shouldn't cut that up, I understand. I mean, this is somebody's work, but nobody's using this piece. And there's a million of them here in the South where I live. I live in Northwest Florida, which is about as south as you can get. Because then in Florida, the further south you go, the further north you go. There's more northerners down south in Florida. All right, now I'm gonna look at this again. Do I have a preference on the side? They're pretty much the same. I think this is the back, so I'm gonna use this side. Okay, now, do I like better where I kind of like this better. They're both good. Then the question is, do I want to keep going with the same colors I had? I think let's change it out. All right, I still have my green thread. So let's get some of the green thread going. I will keep that going because it's my only variegated green. Or at least in this collection. I have so much thread. I rescue it from estate sales. Okay, so I learned something, and that is if you're getting thread from estate sales, you want to make sure it's not brittle. if you have old thread, it is not going to last forever. Thread is a fiber and it breaks down. So you want to give it a little bit of a tug and make sure that it's still strong. And if it is, great. You can definitely use old thread, and I do all the time. But you want to make sure it's still sturdy and that you're not making a project with something that, is then going to break easily. All right, here we go. How shall we do this one? I think this one I am going to orient this way. This one I think I'll start off with some grass. A few little pieces of it. So what have you been working on? Are you following Kate in the Nest and doing her mini makes and all of her fun things? I've caught a few of hers, and I haven't been able to sit down to do one of those projects lately because I've been working on some other things, but I sure do love how she puts things together. So fun. All right, so this one, I've just got some grass going on at the bottom here. And again, these are just straight stitches. Then I think I'll make one little stem come up here. And what I like to do is, come on, there we go. I like to just bring it into the top of the stem so that it keeps going. And then I think I'll do a little leaf higher up off of this one. So again, I'm going to do a little lazy daisy stitch to give myself a leaf. Now, could you do flowers made of lazy daisy stitches? Of course you could. Oh, I love making those. But for this one, I just decided to make tight little French knot flowers. And, oh, I went the wrong way. That's okay. I'm going to make another stem over here. That's the thing about this. I love doodling with thread. We have no plan. We're you're just sketching with thread. And if I put something where I wasn't intending it, it doesn't matter. Now let's see. I think I'm going to come in here with, let me come back in here with another little leaf. So I'm kind of running low on green. So little lazy daisy. I'm bringing this right here. So cute. I'm going to make a little leaf here, a tiny leaf, just because I want to fill it in a bit. All right, what color should we do these flowers? Now, I don't have other colors of variegated, but that's all right. All right, so I went ahead and threaded up some variegated pink thread that I found. So let's give it a little pink and red bouquet here. I think in addition to these, I'll have the words that they can sew on. And then I'm going to probably suggest that we do some straight stitches just across, kind of in a canthus style. That's always good for sort of meditative stitching. Or they could do a circle of straight stitches. I always like doing circles or some other design. The point again is just the process of stitching and not so much what you're making. But I think you can do slow stitch elements in something and then gather them together to make something, because most of us creatives like to have something that we can use or enjoy, whether it's just a little tiny piece of artwork or a rice bag or a journal cover or whatever. So we'll give them some options. Now, if this happens with one of your French knots where it's kind of loopy and it didn't go in quite right, you can always make some more and tack it over so that just don't go through the same thread. You can kind of fill it in. Or like this one, I'll probably do one next to it and I'll loop it through just to tack that down. But I'm gonna do a separate little French knot next to it. Now, I am in no way an expert on any of these stitches, but it's enough. It's enough to make a little cute scene, so. I think that's part of the whole thing with slow stitching and these different more process-oriented ways of making creative things is that you don't worry as much about the end product. And your focus is more on the process of creating something. If any of you consider yourselves to be, you identify with slow stitching as a thing that matters to you, I would love to hear how you see it and what role it plays for you. If you want to drop a comment, I would love that, because I discovered this way of stitching a couple of years ago, and it has really become something very sweet in my rhythm of rest. I tend to be a really busy person. Not busy, I just have a very full and varied life. And it's helpful to me to have something that's kind of grounding. And I find that this does that. Someone told me a couple of weeks ago that they need to give their inner toddler something to do. And I was like, yeah, I could kind of resonate with that. It's like my hands need a project, and then it allows my mind to quiet and think and pray or whatever. It just gives, or listen. I'll do this when I'm in a study or even a couple of my board meetings where they understand. I'll bring my stitching because it actually helps me listen more effectively, because my hands have something to work on. Oh, I'm pretty close to the end on this one, but I think I can make a tiny little knot here. The other thing is, if you're working with many strands like that, make sure you don't go in the middle of them like I just almost did, because that will make a mess. If you pull your threads tightly, it'll help it to go in. Yeah, one little tiny knot there. I think I want one more over there, so I'm gonna have to get some more thread. That's fine. We'll bring this through here. I might loop again if I don't feel like it's secure. Let's cut that one off. Let's add a few more blossoms over on this side just to fill in this white space. I love working with doilies like this. Now this one is cotton and it's not, crocheted or something like that. Those I don't use for this particular project, but I will have some available that the women can use in their slow stitching, because a little crocheted doily is easy to stitch onto a project and have instant texture, just adds an element. Now I'm going back through, I have these three, with working with the variegated thread means that it's obviously going to, now I have lighter ones. And so I want to maybe spread those out a tiny bit. Let's see, that one, it just didn't quite catch. So I'm just doing a stitch through it and it'll secure it down a little better. I think I'm gonna throw a couple pink ones on this side just so it's spread out a bit. The thing in working with little stitches like this is when you're working with a variegated thread, you're probably not going to see a huge change like with those, because you're just making a few tiny stitches and you're only using that much of the thread, so the color hasn't changed. until you get further away. And so I do go back, and when the color changes, I might come over here and add in a couple more of that shade. And I find that that just visually maybe works better. But if you wanted some in one section to be one color and some to be a different color, that would also work. All right, maybe one more here. I hope you're able to see this. I hope I'm not totally covering it up. There we go. All right, pull that through, secure my thread on the back, trim her off. Perfect. 3 little options for the ladies to use to put onto their projects. I love that. And if I wanted to for my own project, I could just have a pile of these that I could add to a journal or to a purse or a bag or something. I love having these projects that I can just stitch quickly and easily, that are, you know, I don't even have to think about it. I just pick out my favorite color and stitch. I love having some projects like that around so that you can work on them as you want. And then when you're getting down to a bigger project, you have lots of little pieces to work with. All right, my friends, I hope that you enjoyed creating these little flower gardens with me, and I would love to see what you're doing. So if you want to follow me over on Dottie May Vintage, you can share there some of your work on Facebook. All right, friends, thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.